Today I am going to tell you the most transformative story of my life. The story of how I, a Muslim woman named Aisha, destroyed a Virgin Mary shrine at a Catholic wedding in the Philippines. And how what happened next changed everything I thought I knew about faith, forgiveness, and the true meaning of divine mercy. What I did that day in August 2019 should have destroyed me. It should have sent me to prison, turned my community against me, made me an outcast in my own country. But instead, something unthinkable happened. Something that modern science cannot explain. Something that made believers and non-believers alike question everything they thought they understood about the nature of miracles. If you have ever struggled with anger, with prejudice, with hatred born from pain, you need to hear this story until the very end. Because what happened to me can happen to anyone who opens their heart to transformation. Before we continue, support this testimony by liking this video right now. Your engagement helps stories of faith and reconciliation reach people who desperately need them. My name is Aisha Makandatu. I was born in 1987 in Marawi City, Mindanao, Philippines. For those unfamiliar with Philippine geography, Mindanao is the southern major island, the only region with a significant Muslim population in this overwhelmingly Catholic nation of over 100 million people. I grew up in a devout Muslim household. My father was an imam at our local mosque. My mother taught Quranic studies to young girls. We lived simply but with dignity, our lives structured around the 5 daily prayers, Ramadan fasting, and the teachings of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. Marawi was known as the Islamic city of the Philippines. Our streets echoed with calls to prayer 5 times daily. Women wore hijab without question. Men attended Friday prayers at beautiful mosques with traditional architecture blending Maranao indigenous design with Islamic artistic elements. We had our own schools, our own markets, our own cultural identity within the larger Philippine nation. But Mindanao has always been a place of tension. Centuries of colonial history, failed peace agreements, armed conflict between government forces and Muslim separatist groups, poverty, and mutual distrust between religious communities created an environment where prejudice grew like weeds in fertile soil. I attended public school where I was one of only 3 Muslim students in a class of 40. The majority were Catholic. I experienced discrimination daily. Teachers who marked my papers harder. Classmates who whispered Moro behind my back, using the term not as neutral descriptor but as slur. Parents who told their children not to sit near me during lunch. When I was 14 years old, in 2001, something happened that planted the seed of hatred in my heart. My older brother Rashid, who was 17, was killed in crossfire during a military operation against an insurgent group in our neighborhood. He was not involved in any armed group. He was simply walking home from the market when bullets started flying. The soldiers said it was collateral damage. Unavoidable civilian casualty in necessary anti-terrorism operation. No one was held accountable. No one apologized. My family received no compensation. Just a body bag and a report filed away in some government office. My father, who had always preached peace and understanding, became silent after Rashid died. My mother cried for months. And I, a teenage girl who had lost her beloved brother, felt something dark and corrosive take root inside me, rage. That rage found a target. In my grief-stricken mind, I blamed not just the soldiers but the entire system they represented. The Catholic-dominated government. The Catholic majority population that elected that government. The Catholic Church that blessed military operations. My anger was irrational, sweeping, and all-consuming. I graduated high school with excellent grades despite my internal turmoil. I studied accounting at Mindanao State University in Marawi. I was good with numbers, methodical, detail-oriented. I got a job at a mid-sized company in Iligan City, a predominantly Catholic city 2 hours from Marawi. By 2019, at age 32, I was living a double life. Outwardly, I was a professional accountant, competent and quiet. Inwardly, I nursed wounds that had never healed, prejudices I had never examined, and an anger that simmered constantly just beneath the surface. In May 2019, something unexpected happened at work. My colleague Maria Santos, a Catholic woman in her late 20s with whom I had maintained strictly professional relationship for 3 years, approached my desk one afternoon. She placed an envelope in front of me. Inside was a wedding invitation. Elegant cardstock, gold embossing, formal wording inviting me to her wedding to her fiancé Roberto on August 10th at San Agustin Church in Iligan City, followed by reception at a hotel garden venue. I was shocked. We were not friends. We barely spoke beyond work necessities. I had deliberately kept distance from Catholic colleagues, protecting myself from potential hurt by preemptively building walls. Maria seemed nervous. She explained that she had noticed my excellent work over the years, that she respected my professionalism, that she wanted to bridge the gap between different communities in our office. She said her wedding would include guests from different faiths and backgrounds, that her fiancé Roberto shared her vision of an inclusive celebration. I should have declined politely. But something in her genuine nervousness, her obvious effort to extend an olive branch despite my coldness over the years, made me do something uncharacteristic. I accepted. The weeks leading to the wedding were strange. I kept asking myself why I had agreed to attend. Part of me was curious. Part of me felt obligated professionally. But there was also something darker. A part of me wanted to witness Catholic ceremony close up, to confirm my existing prejudices, to find validation for the anger I had carried for 18 years. I told my mother I was attending a work colleague's wedding. She was surprised I had been invited. She reminded me to be respectful of their customs, even if they differed from ours, that the Quran teaches respect for people of the book. I nodded but inwardly dismissed her counsel. August 10th arrived. I dressed modestly in long skirt and long-sleeved blouse with my hijab. I drove to San Agustin Church, an old Spanish colonial structure with thick stone walls, Baroque architectural details, and religious imagery that felt alien to my sensibilities. The church was decorated beautifully for the wedding. White flowers everywhere, candles, ribbons, and prominently displayed near the entrance to the main sanctuary was a small shrine to the Virgin Mary. Blue-robed statue about 2 feet tall, hands clasped in prayer position, surrounded by fresh flowers, votive candles, and a small sign inviting guests to offer prayers before entering the ceremony. I stared at that shrine with unexpected intensity. All my buried anger from 18 years suddenly rose to the surface. In that moment, that statue represented everything I blamed for my brother's death, for my family's suffering, for centuries of Muslim marginalization in this Catholic-dominated nation. The ceremony proceeded. I sat in the back, watching as Maria and Roberto exchanged vows, as the priest conducted the Catholic marriage rites, as communion was offered to baptized Catholics while I remained seated. Everything felt foreign, excluding, a reminder that I did not belong in this space. After the ceremony, guests moved toward the exit. Most paused at the Virgin Mary shrine, crossing themselves, touching the statue, leaving small monetary offerings for the church. I watched this with growing contempt. Then something inside me snapped. What I am about to describe is the worst thing I have ever done. There is no justification, no excuse, only raw truth about how hatred can possess a person in a single moment of madness. As guests flowed past the Virgin Mary shrine toward the reception venue, I remained behind. The church was emptying. Only a few elderly women knelt in pews praying quietly. The priest had gone to the reception. I was essentially alone near the entrance. I looked at that statue. At the serene face, the painted eyes downcast in humility, the hands joined in perpetual prayer. And in my disturbed state of mind, I saw not a religious symbol worthy of respect, but a target for all my accumulated rage. I stepped toward the shrine. My hands trembled. My heart pounded. Some part of me screamed to stop, but that voice was drowned out by 18 years of unprocessed grief and anger. I reached out and pushed the statue. It was heavier than expected, mounted on a wooden base. I pushed harder. It rocked. Then, with one violent shove, I sent it crashing to the stone floor. The sound echoed through the church like a gunshot. The ceramic statue shattered into dozens of pieces. The blue robe cracked apart. The serene face split down the middle. Flowers scattered. Votive candles rolled across the floor. The small donation box spilled coins everywhere. The elderly women praying in pews turned and gasped. One screamed. Another ran toward the church office shouting for help. I stood frozen, staring at what I had done. The destruction spread before me. And in that moment of silence after impact, I felt not satisfaction but horror. Deep, immediate, overwhelming horror at my own action. Within seconds, people rushed back into the church. The priest, church staff, wedding guests who had heard the crash, security personnel. They surrounded me. Some shouted. Some wept. Some stared in disbelief. Maria appeared in her wedding dress, face pale with shock. Roberto stood beside her, arm protectively around his new wife. They looked at me with confusion and hurt. Security guards grabbed my arms. Someone called police. I did not resist. I could not speak. I simply stared at the shattered pieces of the statue on the stone floor, watching candlelight flicker across broken ceramic, and realized I had just destroyed any possibility of peace in my life. The police arrived within 15 minutes. They handcuffed me. Read my rights. Witnesses gave statements describing what I had done. The priest, an older man named Father Miguel, looked at me with sadness rather than anger, which somehow made everything worse. They took me to the police station, charged me with malicious mischief, destruction of religious property, and disturbance of religious worship. These were serious charges in the Philippines, where respect for religious sites is protected by law. I was photographed, fingerprinted, and placed in a holding cell. As I sat on the concrete bench in that small locked room, reality crashed down on me. I had committed a crime motivated by religious hatred at a wedding, on one of the happiest days of someone's life, in front of dozens of witnesses. I expected to feel defiant, justified, but instead I felt empty, ashamed, and utterly alone. That first night in custody was the longest of my life. The holding cell was small, concrete walls painted institutional gray, a single barred window too high to see through, a metal bench, a toilet in the corner with no privacy. I was the only person in the cell. The silence was oppressive. Every few hours, a guard would pass by, look at me through the bars, and continue walking. No one spoke to me. No one explained what would happen next. I tried to pray. Automatically, I turned toward the direction of Mecca, began the ritual movements and words of Maghrib prayer. But the words felt hollow in my mouth. How could I pray after what I had done? I had desecrated another faith's sacred symbol in a house of worship. I had acted exactly like the extremists that every peaceful Muslim community works to distance itself from. Around midnight, a female guard brought me a meal. Rice, small piece of fish, water. I could not eat. She said nothing, but her eyes held pity, which was somehow worse than contempt would have been. I thought about my mother. When she found out what I had done, her heart would break. My father was already gone, having died in 2015, but I was grateful he would not witness his daughter's disgrace. I thought about Maria. Her wedding day, which should have been perfect memory, was now forever marked by my violent act. I had repaid her kindness with destruction. I thought about my brother Rashid. Would he be ashamed of what I had become? He had been gentle, kind, always the one to mediate conflicts in our neighborhood. He would have been horrified by my action. Around 3 in the morning, I finally broke down. Sitting on that cold concrete bench, I wept. Not tears of self-pity but tears of genuine remorse. For the first time in 18 years, I cried not for my own pain but for the pain I had caused others. At dawn, I heard activity in the station. Voices, footsteps, doors opening and closing. I wondered if they were preparing to transfer me to a larger detention facility, to formally arraign me in court. Around 7 in the morning, the guard opened my cell door. She told me I had visitors. I was confused. My mother lived 2 hours away in Marawi and could not possibly have arrived yet. They led me to a small visiting room. And sitting there, waiting for me, were the last people I expected to see. Father Miguel, the priest whose church I had desecrated, and Maria, still wearing casual clothes but clearly exhausted from a sleepless night. We are at the turning point of this testimony. What happened next defies human logic. If this story is touching something inside you, like this video now and share it. Someone in your life needs to hear about the power of unexpected forgiveness. I sat down across from Father Miguel and Maria, unable to meet their eyes. The guard stood by the door. The small room felt suffocatingly close. Father Miguel spoke first. His voice was calm, without accusation. He said he had spent the night in prayer after what happened at the church. He said he had been asking God for guidance on how to respond to this situation. I braced myself for condemnation. Instead, he asked me a question. Why had I done it? The question disarmed me completely. For the first time since my arrest, someone was treating me not as a criminal to be punished but as a human being to be understood. Words tumbled out. I told them about Rashid. About 18 years of carrying grief and anger. About how that statue in that moment had become a symbol of everything I blamed for my suffering. I did not try to justify my action. I simply explained the darkness I had been living in. Maria listened with tears streaming down her face. When I finished, she did something I will never forget as long as I live. She reached across the table and took my hands in hers. She said that while I was destroying the statue, she had been at the reception greeting guests. When someone ran in shouting about what had happened, her first reaction was anger. But Roberto reminded her of something they had discussed during their marriage preparation. That their union was meant to be a bridge between communities, a symbol of reconciliation in a divided society. She said that my action, horrible as it was, revealed the depth of pain that still existed in Mindanao between religious communities. Pain that would never heal if people responded to hatred with more hatred. Then Father Miguel made an offer that changed everything. He said the church would not press charges if I agreed to 3 conditions. First, I must work with him and the parish community to restore the destroyed shrine, not just financially but personally, learning about the significance of Mary in Catholic faith and why that symbol mattered to believers. Second, I must participate in interfaith dialogue sessions that Father Miguel was organizing, sharing my story to help others understand how prejudice develops and how it can be overcome. Third, I must commit to a process of personal healing, addressing the trauma and grief I had carried since my brother's death. He said that punishment would not heal the wound that caused my action. Only understanding, forgiveness, and transformation could do that. I was stunned. In the Philippines, where religious tensions had sparked violence and division for generations, here was a Catholic priest offering mercy instead of justice, rehabilitation instead of retribution, to a Muslim woman who had committed an act of religious hatred against his church. Maria added that she forgave me, that she wanted me to be part of the healing process, not excluded from it. That her wedding day, despite everything, had taught her that reconciliation was more important than perfection. I could barely speak through my tears. I accepted their offer. And in that small visiting room in a police station at 7:30 on a Sunday morning in August 2019, something began to shift in my soul. The charges were formally dropped by noon that same day. Father Miguel signed documents stating the church was declining to prosecute. The police released me with warnings about my conduct and notation in my record, but no criminal conviction. I went home to my small apartment in Iligan City. Everything looked the same, but I felt completely different. I had entered that church yesterday as one person and was now returning as someone else, someone who had touched the absolute bottom of her own darkness and been pulled back by unexpected grace. Within a week, restoration work began. Father Miguel arranged for me to meet with the church's art committee. The destroyed statue had been a beloved fixture for over 50 years, donated by a parishioner's family in the 1960s. Many elderly parishioners had grown up praying before that particular image. The cost to replace it with a similar quality statue was substantial. I emptied my savings account without hesitation. But Father Miguel insisted on more than financial restitution. He wanted spiritual restoration. He introduced me to Sister Therese, an elderly nun who had spent 40 years teaching Marian devotion. She was in her 70s, gentle-voiced, with eyes that seemed to see directly into your soul. Sister Therese did not lecture me about theology. Instead, she shared stories. She explained why Mary was important to Catholics not as deity but as exemplar of faith, obedience, and motherhood. She described how Mary's yes to God despite not understanding the full plan had become a model for trusting divine wisdom even in confusion. She talked about the sorrows of Mary, particularly watching her son be executed violently. She said that Mary understood the grief of mothers and sisters who lose beloved ones to violence, that countless people over centuries had brought their pain to Mary's intercession because she knew that specific suffering. I listened with growing understanding. That statue I had destroyed represented not oppression but consolation for people carrying their own griefs and struggles. I had attacked a symbol of hope for the suffering. Father Miguel also introduced me to Catholic families who had lost members to violence in Mindanao's conflicts. A mother whose son was killed in a terrorist bombing at a market. A father whose daughter died in crossfire during a military operation similar to the one that killed Rashid. A grandmother whose grandson simply disappeared during martial law years and was never found. These people had every reason to hate Muslims, just as I had every reason to hate Catholics. But instead, they had chosen paths of forgiveness, of working for peace, of refusing to let hatred poison their remaining years. One woman named Lourdes, who had lost her 20-year-old son to violence, told me something profound. She said that hatred is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. That her son was gone regardless of how she felt, but her choice to forgive or to hate would determine whether she would truly live the rest of her own life. The new statue was commissioned from a church artisan in Manila. While we waited for its completion, Father Miguel invited me to attend the interfaith dialogue sessions he had mentioned. These monthly gatherings brought together Muslims, Catholics, indigenous Lumad people, and other faith communities in Mindanao. The goal was simple: share stories, build understanding, find common ground while respecting differences. At my first session in September 2019, I was terrified. But Father Miguel introduced me not as the woman who destroyed the shrine but as Aisha, someone on a journey of healing and reconciliation. The group welcomed me without judgment. In October 2019, something extraordinary started happening. People who had been present at San Agustin Church on the day of the destruction began reporting unusual experiences that defied rational explanation. The first account came from Lola Carmen, one of the elderly women who had been praying in the pews when I shattered the statue. She was 73 years old, a daily Mass attendee for over 50 years, a woman whose faith was as steady and unremarkable as sunrise. She contacted Father Miguel 3 weeks after the incident to report something that had shaken her deeply. Lola Carmen explained that in the nights following what she witnessed, she had been experiencing vivid dreams of the Virgin Mary. Not vague impressions or symbolic imagery, but clear, detailed visions more intense than any spiritual experience in her 7 decades of Catholic practice. In these dreams, Mary appeared dressed in blue and white, speaking without words, communicating directly to her heart. The message was consistent: pray for the young Muslim woman who destroyed the statue, for she was carrying unbearable pain that needed healing. Father Miguel, being a rational and theologically trained priest, initially approached this with appropriate caution. The Catholic Church has strict protocols for investigating claimed visions and miracles. Most supernatural claims have natural explanations: psychological processing of trauma, suggestion, wishful thinking, mental illness. He listened respectfully but made no commitments about the validity of her experience. But then more reports arrived, each independent of the others. A young man named Carlo, who had been a guest at the wedding, came to confession in early October. He was 26 years old and had been struggling with methamphetamine addiction for 3 years. His life was spiraling. He had lost 2 jobs, alienated his family, burned through his savings, and was on the verge of complete collapse. He had attended the wedding only because his mother had forced him, and he had been high during the ceremony. Carlo told Father Miguel that witnessing the destruction of the statue had triggered something in him. In the moment of impact, when ceramic shattered across stone floor, he experienced overwhelming conviction that his own life was similarly breaking apart. That night, he could not sleep. For the first time in years, he prayed. Not sophisticated theological prayer, just desperate plea. "Help me, I am dying, I cannot do this alone." The next morning, for reasons he could not explain, he walked into a rehabilitation center and admitted himself. By mid-October, he had been clean for 60 consecutive days, unprecedented in his multiple previous failed attempts. He credited something supernatural that happened in that church, some spiritual energy released through the destruction, with giving him strength he had never possessed on his own. Maria and Roberto, the newlyweds, reported their own unexpected experience. In the weeks following their wedding, despite the trauma of what had occurred, they found themselves experiencing profound spiritual and relational clarity. They had been struggling with typical newlywed conflicts about money management, where to live, how to balance careers and future family plans. These disagreements had been creating serious tension before the wedding. But after that day, something shifted. Maria described it as sudden ability to see Roberto's perspective with unusual empathy, to communicate without defensiveness, to compromise without resentment. Roberto reported the same phenomenon from his side. Within a month of their wedding, they had resolved conflicts that had seemed insurmountable just weeks earlier. They could not explain it through marriage counseling or normal adjustment, because it felt qualitatively different. Supernatural peace where there should have been continuing struggle. More accounts accumulated throughout October and November. A woman named Grace, who suffered from lupus for 8 years, reported unexpected improvement in her symptoms after visiting the church to pray at the site where the statue had stood. Her rheumatologist confirmed measurable decrease in inflammation markers but could not explain the sudden change. A man named Ernesto, estranged from his younger brother for over a decade following inheritance dispute, experienced overwhelming compulsion to reconcile. He showed up at his brother's house unannounced, apologized for his pride and greed, and asked for forgiveness. The brothers reconciled within hours, something family members had considered impossible. A 17-year-old girl named Sophia, who had been planning suicide and had written detailed farewell letters to her family, was at the church that day as part of Maria's extended family circle. Witnessing the destruction and the chaos that followed somehow shocked her out of her suicidal ideation. She could not articulate why, but something about seeing real crisis unfold made her own internal crisis seem less absolute. She sought counseling and by November was on path toward genuine healing. By the end of November 2019, Father Miguel had documented 14 separate accounts of significant positive transformations in people's lives that they directly associated with being present at or connected to San Agustin Church on August 10th. Some were dramatic physical healings. Others were psychological breakthroughs. Still others were relational reconciliations. But all shared common element: unexpected positive change following traumatic event. Father Miguel maintained careful documentation but made no public claims. The Catholic Church's process for declaring miracles is rigorous, requiring extensive investigation, medical verification, elimination of natural explanations, and ultimately approval from Vatican authorities. He was not prepared to call these occurrences miraculous in the technical theological sense. However, privately, he shared with me his growing conviction that something extraordinary had happened. Not despite the destruction but somehow through it. as if the shattering of that physical symbol had created rupture in the normal order of things, an opening through which grace could flow in unexpected ways. I did not know what to make of these reports. As a Muslim, I had my own theological framework for understanding divine intervention. The Quran speaks of ayat, signs from Allah manifested in the natural world and in human experience. Islamic tradition acknowledges karamat, extraordinary events associated with righteous people. But miracles associated with my act of hatred? With destruction I had committed in rage? It seemed theologically backwards. Yet I could not dismiss the sincerity of these testimonies. These were not gullible people seeking attention. They were ordinary Catholics, some skeptical by nature, reporting experiences that confused them as much as anyone else. And the transformations were real. Carlo was genuinely sober, marriages were genuinely healing, Sophia was genuinely choosing life. As November turned to December, I braced myself for whatever would come next, sensing that my own encounter with the unthinkable was not yet complete. On December 7, 2019, at approximately 4 in the morning, I woke from a dream that changed everything. I had been having restless sleep for weeks, processing everything that had happened since August. But this was different. This was not the confused jumble of normal dreaming. This was vivid, coherent, more real than waking consciousness. In the dream, I stood in a place of pure light. Not harsh or blinding, but gentle illumination that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere simultaneously. And standing before me was Rashid, my brother, dead for 18 years but now appearing whole, radiant, at peace. He looked exactly as I remembered him at 17, but also different. His features were the same, but his presence was transformed, carrying weight and authority he had never possessed in life. He did not look like a ghost or memory. He looked more real than anything in my waking world. He spoke my name. Just once. Aisha. And in that single word I heard everything. Love, sorrow, understanding, and urgency. Then he said what I needed to hear but had been unable to accept for 18 years. He told me that my anger over his death had honored nothing about his life. That he had lived with kindness, generosity, and faith. That he had died as Shaheed, martyr innocent of any crime, which in Islamic understanding meant his soul was directly with Allah, bypassing normal reckoning. That he was at peace. But I was not at peace. And my continued suffering was not memorial to him but prison I had built for myself. He told me that the soldiers who killed him were not monsters but frightened young men making terrible decisions in impossible circumstances. That the Catholic majority population of Philippines was not monolithic enemy but millions of individual souls, most of them struggling with their own pain and trying to live faithfully within their own understanding of truth. He said that my hatred had not protected me. It had not prevented other tragedies. It had not made me stronger or safer. It had simply consumed years of my life that I could never recover. Then he said the words that broke me completely. Forgive them. Not for their sake, but for yours. Forgive so you can live. Forgive so you can be free. I tried to argue, to defend my anger, to explain why forgiveness was impossible. But he simply repeated, "Forgive, forgive, forgive." Then he was gone and I woke up sobbing so violently that I could barely breathe. My pillow was soaked with tears. My body shook with the force of grief finally, fully released after 18 years of being held rigid and hard. I do not know if that dream was truly Rashid's soul communicating across the barrier of death, a message from Allah delivered through vision, or simply my own subconscious finally breaking through the walls I had constructed. Islamic theology allows for all three possibilities. Dreams can be revelations, especially for those who pray sincerely for guidance. But the source did not matter. The effect was the same. Something fundamental had shifted inside me. The armor I had been wearing since I was 14 years old had finally cracked open, and beneath it I found not strength but exhaustion. I was so tired of carrying hatred, so tired of being afraid, so tired of dividing the world into us and them. I called Father Miguel that morning at 7 o'clock, knowing it was early but unable to wait. I told him about the dream through tears and fragmented sentences. He listened without interruption until I finished. Then he said something I will never forget. He said that perhaps God, Allah, the divine mystery by whatever name we use, was using my destructive act as catalyst for healing not just in my life but in many lives. That sometimes grace works through our worst moments to create redemption we could never engineer ourselves. That my brokenness had become doorway for others to encounter mercy. He said that in Christian understanding, the crucifixion was history's greatest injustice, innocent man tortured to death by religious and political authorities. But through that evil act, Christians believe redemption entered the world. Not because the evil was good, but because God can transform even the worst human action into opportunity for grace. He was not saying my destruction of the statue was equivalent to the crucifixion. He was saying that divine mercy operates according to logic that transcends human understanding, that can take our sins and failures and somehow weave them into larger pattern of healing. I spent the rest of December in intensive reflection and prayer. I read both Quran and Christian scriptures Father Miguel recommended. I discovered surprising convergence in the mercy teachings of both traditions. Both emphasized that divine forgiveness infinitely exceeds human forgiveness. Both taught that no sin is beyond redemption for those who genuinely repent. Both insisted that holding grudges poisons the grudge holder more than the target. The new Virgin Mary statue arrived from Manila in mid-December. It was beautiful work, hand-carved and painted by master artisan, blessed by Archbishop before shipping. It cost more than I wanted to know, but every peso came from my own savings and I offered it willingly as tangible symbol of my remorse. Father Miguel scheduled the installation ceremony for December 22nd, giving the parish community time to prepare and allowing media interest to build. The story had been covered by local news, then national outlets, and eventually by international religious media. Catholic and Muslim leaders across Philippines were watching to see how this situation would resolve. Father Miguel asked if I would be willing to participate actively in the ceremony. Not as criminal making court-ordered restitution, but as sister in faith joining in sacred moment of restoration. He wanted my participation to symbolize genuine reconciliation between communities. I agreed, though I was terrified of public response. I did not know if the parish community would accept my presence or if protesters would appear denouncing me. I prepared myself for either possibility. December 22nd arrived cold and overcast, typical weather for Philippine December in mountain regions. I dressed carefully in my best baju kurung and hijab, wanting to present myself with dignity while remaining true to my Muslim identity. I arrived at San Agustin Church an hour before the ceremony. Father Miguel met me at the entrance, accompanied by Sister Therese and several other parish leaders. They welcomed me warmly, which helped calm my nerves slightly. The church filled quickly. Many of the same people who had been present at the wedding were there. Wedding guests, parish regulars, community leaders, and also media with cameras and microphones. I recognized some of the people whose transformation stories I had heard. Carlo the recovering addict, Lola Carmen of the Visions, Grace who had experienced physical healing. At 10 o'clock, the ceremony began. Father Miguel opened the ceremony by speaking to the packed church about mercy, forgiveness, and the mysterious ways that brokenness can become breakthrough. His voice was strong and clear, carrying both pastoral authority and genuine emotion. He acknowledged the pain of August 10th. He did not minimize what I had done or pretend it was less serious than it was. He named it clearly, an act of religious hatred, a violation of sacred space, a crime that had wounded the parish community deeply. But then he pivoted to speak about response. He said that in the face of hatred, communities have choices. They can respond with more hatred, with punishment, with exclusion, perpetuating cycles of violence that had plagued Mindanao for generations. Or they can respond with mercy, creating space for transformation that breaks cycles rather than continuing them. He told the congregation about the transformation stories that had emerged in the previous 4 months. He read excerpts from written testimonies people had submitted. He spoke about Carlo's sobriety, about reconciled relationships, about physical and emotional healings, about spiritual breakthroughs. He said that none of this justified my destructive act, but it revealed something profound about how grace operates, that God can take even our worst moments and somehow weave them into larger tapestry of redemption, that the shattering of one symbol had somehow opened doorways for multiple healings. Then he invited me to approach the front of the church. My legs trembled as I stood and walked down the center aisle. Every eye in the building followed me. Some faces showed compassion. Others showed lingering anger or confusion. A few showed open hostility. I understood all of those reactions. I reached the front where the new statue stood covered with white cloth. Father Miguel stood beside it. Sister Teresa was there. And so was Maria, radiant in her presence, with Roberto standing protectively beside her. Father Miguel addressed me directly, speaking loudly enough for the entire congregation to hear. He asked me to share, in my own words, what I had learned over the previous 4 months. I had prepared remarks, but in that moment all my prepared words disappeared. Instead, I spoke from the raw truth of my heart. I spoke about Rashid, about carrying grief for 18 years, about how that grief had calcified into hatred, about how I had allowed my brother's death to poison everything beautiful in my life. I spoke about the moment I destroyed the statue, about the insanity that possessed me, about the immediate horror I felt when ceramic shattered on stone and I realized what I had done. I spoke about Father Miguel's offer of mercy instead of prosecution, about how that single act of grace had been more powerful than any punishment could have been, about how Maria's forgiveness on what should have been the happiest day of her life had cracked open something in me that legal consequences never could have reached. I spoke about the dream of Rashid, about his message of forgiveness, about finally understanding that hatred was prison, not protection. And I spoke directly to the Muslim and Catholic communities listening. I said that our two faiths have much that divides us theologically, but on essential matters of mercy and forgiveness, we teach the same truth. That Allah the Most Merciful and God the Father of Jesus Christ are not competing deities but different names for the same source of all compassion. That if we could learn to extend to each other even fraction of the mercy that divine extends to us, Mindanao could be transformed. When I finished, there was profound silence in the church. Then Father Miguel asked me to join him in unveiling the new statue. Together, we pulled away the white cloth. The new Virgin Mary statue was revealed in all its beauty. Expertly carved wood, painted in traditional blue and white, face serene and hands joined in prayer, positioned exactly where the old statue had stood before I destroyed it. Fresh flowers surrounded the base. New votive candles glowed in red glass holders. And at the foot of the statue, Father Miguel had placed a small bronze plaque that read, "Shrine of Our Lady of Mercy and Reconciliation. Destroyed in hatred, August 2019. Restored in love, December 2019. May all who approach find healing." Father Miguel handed me the first votive candle to light. My hands shook as I took it. I knelt before the statue, whispered a prayer in Arabic asking Allah for forgiveness and for continued guidance on the path of transformation, and placed the lit candle among the others. As I stood and stepped back, something remarkable happened. Maria came forward and embraced me tightly, right there in front of everyone. Then, one by one, others approached. Lola Carmen, the elderly woman of the visions, took my hands and prayed over me in a mixture of Tagalog and Latin. Carlo, the young man in recovery, hugged me and whispered that my story had saved his life. Grace, whose lupus symptoms had improved, touched my shoulder and said she prayed for me daily. Ernesto and his brother, reconciled after a decade of estrangement, both shook my hand. A line formed, not of people seeking to condemn but of people wanting to share how the events of August 10th had catalyzed changes in their own lives. It was as if my worst action had become mirror forcing others to confront their own brokenness and need for grace. Then Imam Abdullah, a Muslim leader from my community in Marawi whom Father Miguel had invited, stood and spoke. His presence there was significant, a public statement that the Muslim community was not rejecting me despite my bringing shame through my actions. Imam Abdullah acknowledged that my act had initially caused distress in our community. Some had called for formal denunciation. Others had wanted to distance themselves completely from me. But he said that my subsequent journey of accountability, remorse, and genuine transformation had itself become powerful testimony to Islamic principles. He recited verses from Quran about repentance and forgiveness. He quoted hadith about how Allah's mercy exceeds His wrath. He said that both Islam and Christianity teach that authentic repentance and sincere mercy are greater than any sin. The ceremony concluded with prayers in multiple languages. Father Miguel led Catholic liturgy. Imam Abdullah recited Quranic passages. A Lumad indigenous elder offered traditional blessing for healing and peace in Mindanao. In that moment, in that church that I had desecrated 4 months earlier, I experienced something I can only describe as the tangible presence of the divine. Not sectarian. Not bounded by doctrinal walls. Not the exclusive property of any single religious tradition, but universal, overwhelming, and completely real. The convergence I felt in that moment was not syncretism, not the blending of religions into some vague universalism. Rather, it was recognition that authentic faith in any tradition points toward the same mystery, the same source, the same overwhelming love that sustains all existence. 6 years have passed since that August day in 2019. Today is December 16th, 2025. I am now 38 years old. My life is unrecognizable from what it was before. I still work as an accountant for the same company, still live in Iligan City. But everything internal has transformed. I am not the same woman who walked into that church carrying 18 years of accumulated hatred. I volunteer extensively with Father Miguel's interfaith reconciliation programs, which have expanded significantly since 2019. We now operate in 12 cities across Mindanao, bringing together Muslims, Catholics, Lumad indigenous peoples, and other faith communities for dialogue, mutual understanding, and practical cooperation on community issues. I share my testimony regularly at schools, universities, community centers, religious gatherings, and peace-building conferences. Every time I tell this story, I see something happen in listeners' eyes. Recognition that they too carry burdens of hatred, that transformation is possible, that mercy is available even for the worst actions. The shrine of Our Lady of Mercy and Reconciliation has become pilgrimage destination. People travel from across Philippines and from other countries to pray there, particularly those seeking healing from religious hatred, family conflicts, and personal traumas. The parish keeps documentation of transformations people attribute to praying at the shrine. Whether these are miraculous interventions or psychological benefits of confronting pain in sacred space, the result remains the same. People find genuine healing. Maria and Roberto are now parents of 2 beautiful children. We have become genuine friends beyond the trauma that first brought us together. Last year, they asked me to be godmother to their second child, a gesture of trust and love that still moves me to tears. In Philippine Catholic tradition, being chosen as godparent signifies deep relationship and spiritual responsibility. That they would extend this honor to the Muslim woman who destroyed their wedding symbolism speaks volumes about the depth of reconciliation we have achieved. My mother initially was devastated by my actions in August 2019. She could not understand how her daughter could commit such an act, bringing shame to our family and community. But she has walked this journey with me, attending some of the interfaith sessions, meeting Father Miguel and the parish community, witnessing genuine transformation. She now says that Allah works in ways beyond human comprehension, that sometimes we must be broken completely before we can be remade into what we were meant to be. I have also completed extensive trauma therapy with a counselor specializing in grief and post-traumatic growth. Through that process, I have learned to separate Rashid's death from the larger narratives I had constructed around it. His killing was tragedy, the result of specific individuals making terrible choices in complex situation during armed conflict. It was not proof of Catholic persecution of Muslims. It was not justification for my hatred. It was simply heartbreaking loss that I needed to grieve rather than weaponize. I pray 5 times daily facing Mecca as I always have. But now my prayers include gratitude for mercy received, petitions for those I have wronged, and commitment to live worthy of the grace that saved me from destroying myself. My faith is deeper than it was before, rooted not in fear and obligation but in genuine love for the divine. People often ask me if I regret what I did. The answer is layered and complex. I deeply regret the harm I caused. The pain to Maria and Roberto on their wedding day. The violation of sacred space for Father Miguel and the parish community. The shame brought to my own Muslim community. That regret will accompany me for the rest of my life. But I am also aware that my destructive act became catalyst for transformation I desperately needed but would never have chosen voluntarily. Not because destruction is good, but because grace can work through anything, even our worst moments, to create redemption. The greatest lesson I carry is this: hatred is easy and forgiveness is hard, but only forgiveness sets you free. When I pushed over that statue, I was prisoner of 18 years of accumulated rage. When Father Miguel offered mercy instead of prosecution, he handed me the key to my own cell. But I still had to choose to use that key, to walk out of the prison I had built for myself. What happened at San Agustin Church in August 2019 remains mysterious. I cannot definitively prove that the subsequent transformations were miraculous interventions. The Catholic Church has not formally declared them miracles. Science-minded people can offer naturalistic explanations. But I know with certainty that something sacred occurred, something that transcended normal cause and effect. 2 great world religions teach that the divine is merciful beyond human comprehension. That day I experienced that truth not through theological concepts but through lived reality. Through a priest who chose mercy. Through a bride who chose forgiveness. Through a community that chose reconciliation over revenge. My name is Aisha Makandatu. I am a Muslim woman who destroyed a Catholic shrine and was saved by Catholic grace. My story is testimony that hatred can be healed, that bridges can be built across deepest divides, and that the unthinkable is possible when people choose love over judgment. If you are carrying hatred today, I beg you to put it down. It is not protecting you. It is poisoning you. The path to freedom begins with the hardest step, choosing to forgive, not because others deserve it, but because you deserve to be free. This is my testimony. This is my truth. This is proof that mercy is stronger than every wall we build, including the walls we construct around our own hearts.